Disruption is a many splendid thing. Most of us are used to what we call explosive disruption. If you're running a taxi firm and Uber comes into town, if you're running a store and Amazon moves into fashion, boom, there's a clear and present danger. The other sort of disruption, though, is compressive disruption. It doesn't happen overnight. It creeps up on you. It's like being in a squeeze. And that squeeze happens two ways. First of all, there's a squeeze on the revenue line. Your brands maybe stop flourishing quite as well as they were. You get that sort of squeeze on the top line. And then the other side is you get squeezed on the profit. That compressive disruption doesn't necessarily get the headlines, but it's probably the nature of disruption which is actually affecting a larger proportion of businesses today than the headline-grabbing explosive disruption. So, for instance, if you take the beer market, that's been hugely exposed to the arrival of craft ale. Craft ale, there's a narrative story, usually a founder story, which tends to be behind smaller brands. If you own big brands, you'll feel yourself being nibbled away, but you've still got the big breweries producing the hectolitres of beer. You can't close down half a brewery, and so you end up just losing that marginal volume off the top. That's a classic example of compressive disruption. You do see it in other areas where you have a consumer habit that doesn't change overnight and a fixed cost base that is pretty hard to reduce in stepwise function. An example might well be airlines. Clearly there's lots of new entrants bringing in new propositions on the top line. Consumers are still flying, but they're finding new and different ways to actually do that flying. But then on the other hand, you've still got to pay your airport landing fees, you still need to have your fixed base, you still need to actually have the aircraft themselves. All that gives you a relatively solid cost base. We see another one in cars. On the one hand, you've got the well-known explosive disruption of electric vehicles, autonomous driving, which could change the whole industry beyond recognition. But of course, in the short term, you've got compressive disruption going on because consumers are maybe slowing down their car buying habits, so there's a squeeze on the top. But they still have the factories. You still have large supply chains and factories to sustain. The interesting thing about the different types of disruption for investors is, of course, it's all about the beta. Explosive disruption will lead to high volatility situations, and if that, of course, is what you're looking for in the portfolio, then you need to hunt out those. Compressive disruption for investors is, of course, a little bit more accessible because you're not looking for huge swings which may be totally unpredictable and, of course, may never happen. You're actually able to get to the next degree of detail, scrutinize different companies and say, well, what would be the so what of this? Who are the players who've got really strong brands who are then doing new things with those brands that appeal to the new audience? There is an investment narrative in there clearly which says these are the folks who've got their mind around living in a world of compressive disruption.